All right, I think we are live. Just checking my settings to make sure everything's good. Okay. All right, first I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. And also, if there's any audio issues or I forgot to hit a button, please tell me in the comments. Let me know so I can quickly fix it. I'm still learning how to do all this stuff and use all these streaming programs, so there's always something that comes up. Anyways, I'm Joanna, and I'm the artist behind J Hill Fine Art. I am a local art teacher, and I'm also a freelance artist. So I love sharing my favorite mediums and teaching people how to draw and paint. And I have a few videos over on my channel already. I've got one color pencil video, but I haven't done a color pencil stream yet. So I've taught quite a few students and workshops in my area about color pencil. And one thing that we don't really get to cover often is creating texture. So I always teach with a focus on doing realism because that's just my preferred method on making art. I love realism, so that tends to be what I like to teach. So anyways, I'm going to be going through this picture of the avocados, and I'm going to be teaching getting color accuracy and getting yourself set up to create the realistic texture. So this is going to take a long time. Color pencil is a very slow medium, so we're going to be doing this project together over the next several weeks. So I plan on having a live stream every Tuesday for the month of July, and that's about 4 live streams, so we should get pretty close to finishing. If I need to go longer on this project, I will, but yeah, so we'll just go ahead and get started. All right, Diane, thank you so much for coming. How are you? You can be here for a little bit. Good. I'm so glad that you came and joined me. Can you hear me okay? Everything good? I just want to make sure that I'm getting all this stuff right. There's always something that goes wrong. So anyways, I'll just start with what I'm going to be using. I'm going to kind of talk briefly about how I set up my projects. So I'm going to be working on pastel matte paper, which is a Clairefontaine product. You can get it in all sorts of different colors. It is archival. It is a textured paper. I use this for all of my color pencil work. I just love the paper. It layers really well. You can get a ton of layers of color pencil, and you can use wet media on this because I like to blend my color pencils with odorless mineral spirits. Thank you, Diane, for clarifying that. Appreciate it. So I started out by using watercolor paper for my color pencils and regular paper too, which those all work just fine. But as I progressed in doing water or color pencil, I discovered that I liked doing the layering method that I'll be teaching you, and I found that this paper just works really, really well for that. So anyways, I prefer the white. I cut this piece of paper down to about an 8x8. The reference photo is much larger. I just kind of chose this composition just because I thought it would look pretty interesting this way. So pencils that I'm going to be using I've got 3 different brands that I prefer. I've got the Derwent the Derwent Lightfast and the Polychromos from Faber-Castell, and then I also have the Caran d'Ache Luminance. And they're all wax and oil based color pencils. They're not watercolor pencils, so if you are using watercolor pencils, those are not going to work for this method because you have to use water to blend those. I'm going to be using odorless mineral spirits, which works best with the wax and the oil based pencils. So I've got my drawing sort of traced on here on my paper already. And I use a light box or I'll just hand sketch it, but I always put my line art on this paper with color pencil. And the reason that I do that is because if you were to use like a regular pencil and then you layer your color pencils on top of that, a lot of times you can still see that graphite underneath, because most color pencils have a bit of transparency to them and you can just see right through it. And then when you go to blend, whether that's with water for watercolor pencils or odorless mineral spirits, it's going to sort of smudge and you're going to kind of get that grayish hue in with your color, and it's just not a very good look. So I've just always done my line drawings with a color pencil, and I sometimes just use gray depending on the picture. In this case, I am using a green outline for the avocado. I used a dark brown for the avocado seed, and then I used sort of a medium gray for the outline of the plate. Now you can decide how much of the reference photo you want to draw. At first I was going to do just the avocados, but then I decided that I would try and do the plate too. It is a little bit, it's very speckled. It's a kind of a fun little plate it's sitting on, and it'll be a little bit of a challenge to create that texture, so that'll be fun. Anyways, I have it taped down on a board. This is just regular MDF board. I got it off of Amazon. You can get it from your local hardware store. Any board will do, but the tape that I have on here is from Blick Art Materials. This is a pH neutral masking tape, and I prefer to use this on my artwork because it doesn't leave a residue that's going to harm my artwork over time. So I try to use archival products and high quality products anytime I'm doing artwork, especially if I plan on selling it. So I want my artwork to last a long time, and that way people can treasure it for a long time and pass it down to someone else who can love it later. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I want to mention I'm also using a tablet with my reference photo on it as well, because I like to be able to zoom in and out if I need to really study the texture of whatever it is that I am trying to capture. And that's, I find, is really helpful. You can use your phone, you can use your laptop. I'll even sometimes print out the reference photo if I just need to, if I don't have my phone or my tablet handy. My printer's not the best. Sometimes if you have a good printer locally, they can print out a better picture than, most home printers can. But I have this just in case I need it. Okay. Oh, inset video has froze. Okay, let's see. Oh, you know what? Let's see if I can fix that. Sorry about that. I knew this thing was going to give me some issues. Let's see. I'm going to be in the market for getting a actual webcam. I'm using my phone as a webcam, and the whatever program this has on it, it's called Dex or something like that. It's just, it's a pain in the butt to use. Let me get this back up here. Do. Okay. Like I said, always something. Okay, I think I'm back. Maybe. Give me 1 second. we go. There's a little bit of a black outline, but I'm not going to worry about it at this moment. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, where was I? Starting the picture. Okay, so I'm going to start off the way I always start off. I sort of have a system that I've just kind of worked out in my head, you know, with any sort of drawing or painting that I do. I start off by color blocking and also just kind of studying what I'm trying to recreate. So I like to find the local colors of a specific area. So I think for the live stream, we're going to start with the bright green section of the avocado. And I'm just going to kind of take a look and see what colors. And if you kind of squint, maybe look with like one eye open, one eye shut, you can kind of simplify the texture a little bit and just kind of see what general colors and values you might need. So this is a lighter value color, so definitely in the yellow green family. So I'm just going to pull some pencils out, a couple lime greens, maybe some that are on like the yellow side, and I may not even use all these colors. I'm just sort of picking out what might work. I noticed that around the outside edges there is a we have a nice dark green outside because we can still see a little bit of the avocado skin. If you see me looking away, I'm just looking at my tablet here, so not trying to ignore the phone at all. And I'm just going to put down my first coat, my first layer. I'm going to start off fairly light. I'm going to use this, this one is the Spring Green from Caran d'Ache. I have a piece of scrap paper here. The outside looks kind of like this, and then it gets sort of to more of a pale yellow as we get closer to the seed. So let's see what this one looks like. Now I'm not worried about any of the texture just yet. So when I create texture, I'm usually creating texture when I have a layer of solid color first, because I want those layers to work together. So I'm going to create my base layers first. So I'm going to, Diane, is the video feed better now? Just want to check in here. And I also am going to put something underneath my hand so I don't smudge my artwork. Okay, so you do want to start off with a fairly sharp pencil. This one's decently sharp. And I'm just going to start filling in where I see this color. I'm not worried about the little veins or the imperfections where of the fruit that'll come later. But I always want to start off always using light hand pressure, just enough to make a mark. And you want to kind of take it just slow and steady. You want to build up color pencil layers. Because this paper is so toothy, you can actually go over, make several passes, and you sort of want to keep the integrity of the tooth of the paper, because that's what's going to hold on to the color pencil. That's what's going to let you layer. So if you're heavy-handed and you squash that tooth, you're going to have a hard time layering. So I'm barely putting much pressure on at all, but I'm using small circular patterns that are sort of compact. That way, when it goes around and around in circles, is constantly overlapping itself. So it's layering on layering and layering. And I'm using small little circles because that gives me a pretty even application. You know, if I were to use a back and forth stroke, you know, kind of doing one of those, sometimes you'll end up getting a stop and a start mark where it's, I'll zoom in on this, where you'll get sort of darker spots and lighter spots in other areas. And when you go to blend that out, those marks tend to show up. And it's kind of hard to get rid of them because, if you're coloring in a linear pattern going back and forth, if you put a line, you're going to get a line, and chances are that line's going to stay there. So if I was making wood grain, that particular technique would make sense. Excuse me. So anyways, we're not making wood grain, we are making an avocado. So I want something that's just very generic and solid without any sort of pattern. Thanks, Diane. Diane, are you working on anything in particular? Do you have any new projects you're working on? So color pencil is one of my favorite art mediums. It's one I've definitely used the most over the years. I feel like I get a lot of control with the medium, and I don't have to really worry about a lot of cleanup. I can just sit down and color, whether that's in a coloring book or just whatever, something that I've made up. And I can just leave all of my pencils and just forget them. And, it's very easy. It's a very easy to learn medium too. I find it's very therapeutic because it's so slow. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink of water. It's very dry in my room. But anyways, so I love color pencil because I can just get a lot of detail, and I feel like I can get a lot of depth, and I don't know, it's just a great medium that I've just learned to love, and maybe it has something to do with me being a control freak because I get the most control out of this particular medium versus anything else I've tried. I think if I had to choose one of these brands, I think I might end up choosing the Luminance brand. For a long, long time, I really loved the Polychromos from Faber-Castell. But lately, I've been reaching a lot for my Luminance pencils just because of color choice. So let me tell you a little bit about the, let's see, Dune Projects with Unmasked Art. Yep. Personal project of a boot that I am doing 4 ways in 1 sheet. Kind of a study. Oh, I like those. Those are so much fun. I hope you post your work to the Unmasked Art Facebook page when you're done with them, because I'd love to see what kind of study you're doing. I believe is it the portrait of the woman that y'all are doing right now? I saw a little bit of the live stream yesterday. By the way, if you're watching this and you love watching art videos, Unmasked Art has the Unmasked Art Club, and it is just a wonderful channel to watch. Will is the guy that is the YouTuber, and he just has really good content and has an online club if that is interests you. He does a lot of different types of mediums, but I enjoy joining the live streams when I can catch them. Okay, so I've got my green down. So anyways, back to the color pencils. So I've got 3 different sets. The first set I bought were the Polychromos Polychromos from Faber-Castell. These are an oil-based pencil, and what that means is the core of the pencil is the pigment is bound in an oil-based composite, whatever binder that they use, but it's oil-based. And so what that means is that it has a much firmer lead. It's not a very soft, buttery lead. A lot of people, you're probably familiar with Prismacolor. That is a wax-based pencil. They're very soft, very buttery. This is sort of the opposite. This is a much firmer of a lead. I like this one a lot because it doesn't fill the tooth of the paper up as quickly, and you can get a lot of really nice detail in your picture with the Faber-Castell Polychromos because it keeps a sharper point for much longer. And they really work well even with, they're all interchangeable, as long as they're not the water. Well, actually, you could use watercolor pencils, but you'd have to use those first, blend them out with water, and then go over top of it with your regular color pencils. The wax-based and the oil-based pencils work hand in hand. They work fine because you can blend them all with odorless mineral spirits. So anyways, so Faber-Castell has the oil-based ones, which have the harder lead. The Luminance, Caran d'Ache Luminance is a wax-based pencil. This would be like the upgrade to the Prismacolors. And what I mean by upgrade is this would be an artist quality. All the pencils, or most of the pencils, are light fast, which means that the pigment is not going to fade for up to 100 years under museum quality conditions. And so that's really the reason why I bought them, is because I wanted something that was going to last longer and that was a little bit better quality. I used to use the Prismacolor for many, many years. And the more I used color pencils, the more I sort of grew out of them in a way, because I noticed that I wanted a better pigment quality. I wanted less filler, more pigment, and I got really tired of my pencils breaking. They're pretty prone to breakage, where if you drop it on the floor, the whole core just shatters, and you just need to go buy new pencils. So these ones don't do that. All these brands, they bind their cores to the wood casing, which is really nice because if you drop them, the tip might break, but it's not going to shatter all the way up. But you shouldn't be dropping your pencils anyway. Okay, so you are coloring the older women in color pencils and a beach scene in pastel. Oh, that's a new one. I haven't seen the beach scene in pastel pencils. That's one medium I haven't tried is pastels. I just can't get over the texture. It's a texture thing for me. It's very powdery, chalky, and it drives me crazy. But I really admire people that can do pastel work because it's really, really beautiful. Okay, so now I'm drawing or coloring in the more of the light yellow area. This one is a Derwent Lightfast. Now this is an interesting brand. The Derwent Lightfast is a hybrid between oil-based and wax-based. So it does have a little bit of a firmer lead than a full wax-based pencil, but it's still soft and creamy feeling. And I really enjoy working with these pencils. They have some really great colors. Pretty much I buy all the sets because I just want as many colors as I can. I'm a little bit of an art supply hoarder, but sometimes you just need that one right color of pencil. Just started it yesterday, okay? Like the pencils, can't stand the sticks. The Prismacolor sticks, is that the ones that you're talking about, or are you talking about the pastel sticks? I think you're probably talking about the pastel sticks. Prismacolor used to have art sticks. They were wax colored pencils, but it was like in a stick form. I quit making them, which is kind of a shame because if you needed to fill in a background and use a lot of color pencil, that would have been the right move. So as I'm laying this color down, this is a little bit more of a warmer orange leaning yellow. It's called Champagne, but I am wanting something a little bit more to the yellow side, less orange. So I'm going to switch this out. let's see here. Let's use, this one is a Naples ochre. And it's pretty much the same. Let's go with, so if you have a lot of colored pencils, I'm going to show you this real quick. I have these binders. And I got these off Amazon, and these keep all of my different pencils. I have one binder for each brand, so this is my Luminance brand, and I just love having them color organized because it makes it a lot easier just to find pencils very, very quickly. But this is a great Amazon find. Let me just adjust that back down. And let's see. Let's try this one. This one's a Polychromos. Yep, I think I like that one. This one is the Polychromos cream color. And it's okay if you pick a color and you start coloring with it and it's not the right one. That's okay. This paper will let you take so many different layers that eventually you will just work it into, you know, the next few layers and you won't even notice. Pastel sticks. Yeah, it's just, they're messy. I don't like them. Even the pencils though, like something about drawing on the paper with something that is chalky, like the vibrations from you drawing on the paper into your hand, like it's just, I don't know, it drives me nuts. So my goal today is to get mostly everything color blocked. We're really not going to start getting into texture until probably the next one where we start really building on top of the foundational layers. So I'll try and work quickly, and you know, if I don't get it all, I plan on getting this color blocked, you know, by the next stream, so I may work on it a little bit off camera, but I'll definitely make sure you know what I'm going to be doing so you don't miss on whatever instructions I'm going to be doing. It's important not to rush your work, because if you rush your work, the little tiny circles that you're coloring tend to get larger and you start missing spaces. So when you go to blend with odorless mineral spirits, if you don't have enough pencil built up, you're not going to get a really nice consistent blend. It'll look more like a grainy wash, which in some cases you may want that. You know, depending on what kind of a technique you're going for. What I'm going for is a nice heavy coat of color pencil that I can blend out and have it to be more like a paint consistency or paint-like consistency. It is a very long process, but it is very relaxing, I have to say. Sometimes I do get a little burnt out on color pencil and I'll switch to a different medium. I've done a lot of oil painting lately. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, I just posted a few days ago, or maybe it's been more than a few days ago, maybe a week ago, a video on alkyd oil painting. So it's another easy medium to use, especially if you're a beginner painter and are finding that acrylic paints are too quick drying and oil paints are too long drying. It's a perfect medium, like a happy medium together. It's like oil paint and acrylic paint had a baby. You get much longer working time, so you can work on your blends, but then it dries by the next day, so you can just jump right back into painting. It's a wonderful medium. It's actually been around for a long time, and I don't know why there aren't more people using it, but I'm determined to convert everybody into using it, because it's the greatest paint ever, in my opinion. Okay, so I've got that filled in. So this is what I'm talking about when I am talking about color blocking. I'm taking the section that I'm looking at, breaking it down into a very simplified manner. Just maybe using 1 or 2 colors. So I've used 2 colors. I haven't really added any shading or anything like that yet. This is just getting myself a very simple roadmap to build on. So now that I've got this down, when I'm teaching my workshops, I usually will kind of take things a little bit slower and, maybe blend it out at this point. But I want to show you all a little bit more how I do that. So if you're more of an advanced artist, I will start skipping some steps. You can kind of blend as you go, as you need, but I try to get as much color blocking and layering done before I do my first blend with the odorless mineral spirits. So if it just helps kind of speed things up a little bit. So I try to get a good amount of detail and layering before I do that. So I'm going to take a dark green, and I'm going to start putting in the outside edge. And I'm just going to swatch out my pencil, see if it's a color that I like. I've got 2 greens out here. This one is pine green. This one is chrome oxide green. They're both from the Polychromos set. I'm going to go with the chrome oxide green. I just think that looks a little bit nicer. So because this is on the outside edge, in fact, I'm going to bring out my handy dandy handout. I want nice clean edges as I work. So this paper, because it's really textured, if you haven't used pastel matte before, it's like a sanded paper, but it's not that gritty. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's kind of gritty, but it's a smooth kind of gritty. But you can really see the texture of the paper. You can really, it's hard to get a nice clean line without picking up that texture, if there's not a lot of layers on it. So anyways, best thing to combat that, especially for doing work along the edges, because this is sitting on a very light colored plate. I don't want a hairy looking green line. So I'm going to sharpen this pencil. This is a great time to use the Polychromos because it has that hard lead. So when you're doing like line work, it's really nice to use something that's going to stay sharp for a while. So I'm going to mute my mic real quick and I'm going to sharpen this. Be right back. Okay, so I don't know if you can see how sharp this is. There we go. It's pretty sharp. I want it to be sharp. And I'm gonna go around very slowly. And I'm still using light hand pressure. And I'm going to intentionally sort of make my outline a little bit wiggly because of the skin texture of the avocado. So this is the part where it helps to have nice, shaky, unsteady hands like I do. And I'm always kind of twisting my pencil because like when you start drawing with one side, you know, it starts to kind of, you know, become less sharp. So I just twist the pencil in my fingers, and you can feel the side that's sharp again. So I'm always sort of twisting my pencils around to keep finding the sharp point. Okay, there we go. And let's see, what else could we add in? So if you look close at the reference, if we zoom in, oh, that's not a very, you can't see that very well on the screen, but if you zoom in, the color's a little off on the monitor, but you can see some more darker green, sort of more yellow ochre mixed with some, it looks like baby food. It looks like baby food. I mean, look at that. But you can tell that there's a layer between the skin and the actual avocado part that you eat. So that is something that I may want to put in as part of my foundational layers, because that's going to help set me up to create that texture later. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to find a, let's see what this one looks like. That might look good for some parts, and maybe even more of this kind of golden color. Maybe these two together in different ratios. This one's yellow ochre, and then this one is olive yellow. These are both luminance pencils. So I'm going to sharpen these real quick again. If you're wondering what sharpener I am using a X-Acto School Pro electric sharpener. It has a dial so you can adjust what different sizes, because all these brands of color pencils have a different diameter, and some of them don't fit in a standard hand or a standard sharpener. So I found this one on Amazon, and it's been with me for several years. It works pretty good. And it actually will stop when you're sharpening it. You put your pencil in, and it actually stops when it's sharp, so it doesn't just eat your pencils, which I really love that feature. All right, so I'm just going to very carefully go around with the yellow ochre. Now I'm going to sort of stagger this, because when I look at my reference, I don't see a solid line of this yellow ochre color, so I only see it, you know, very it's like a broken line essentially. So I'm just going to put it where I see it. Let's see, I'm going to go in with which one was this? The olive yellow. And I'm just going to put that in the places where I see the olive yellow. And it sort of overlaps where I put the ochre a little bit. It's good to overlap your pencil colors too, that, you know, because the nature of color pencils, because they're semi-transparent or translucent, you know, they have some sort of translucency to them. It's like stacking stained glass on top of each other. So the more layers you have, the more that all those layers are going to work together to create depth in your picture. So we're going to go back to the yellow ochre on this side. And there is a lot more shadow up here, which I haven't put in just yet. I'm just going to lay down some of this yellow ochre first. Feel free to ask any art related questions. It doesn't have to be about color pencil specific. You know, we're here to hang out and just learn about art. So feel free to ask me anything. I work best when I got something to talk about. Otherwise I feel like I'm just babbling. Let's see, I don't see as much yellow ochre on this side. Just sort of here and there and here. So, Diane, your study of the boot, what is the study? Are you doing different mediums or different styles? Tell me a little bit more about that. I also see a little bit more of a darker green on this side too. I'm going to take a little bit more of my, I need something, let's see. I need more of a saturated green. There we go. All right, thanks for joining, Diane. Good to see you. Have a great evening. Okay, I think I am happy with that application. So now I'm gonna put in a little bit more of the values, a little bit of the shading, because my eye is immediately going up to this area where the top half of the avocado is overlapping, so I'm getting a little bit more shadows there. Instinctively, you know, you don't always want to go for black or, you know, dark colors of the shadows. You know, sometimes your shadows can be very warm in tone or cool in tone, depending on what kind of an item it's reflecting, what kind of lighting you have. So it looks to me like it's in a pretty neutral white light, but these are green and yellowish sort of objects, so we're going to have some warmer shadows, or at least in my mind, just looking at the reference. And you can kind of create shadows in several different ways. A lot of artists really like, you know, cooler blue tones or purple tones in their shadows. Or complementary colors for shadows. I think all of those would work. It just depends on, you know, well, you know, I always tend to work from a reference photo, so what color am I actually looking at? And these shadows, to me, at least up in this area, look more dark green, sort of heading more into that neutral color, neutral territory. So I'll probably add maybe even a little bit of a sepia color, which is more, I believe, is more of it's a dark brown color, but it's sort of in the yellow family. So that will harmonize with our palette so far. I am adding some dark green. So I'm going to find my sepia. Which is in here somewhere. I know I took it out somewhere and misplaced it. All right, I think I've got a backup here somewhere. Let's see. So one thing about having a lot of pencils is sometimes you can't find them all. There it is. I have a whole pile of pencils sitting beside me right now because I have another project that I'm working on that has required quite a lot of colors. I don't know if you can see behind me, but on my easel is a large color pencil piece I'm currently working on of a Japanese iris, and it's taking forever. But it's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to finish it. So I'm just adding some sepia. What is your definition? Hi, Tim. What is your definition of a lot of pencils? Oh, okay. So this is one tray of the pencils that I'm currently using on the drawing behind me. So, and I'm not even halfway done. I'm sure this pile is going to grow a lot more, but it really helps to have lots of trays to keep your pencils organized, or bags, to put them in. But yes, these are all the ones that I'm using on the picture behind me, and I don't want to put them away just yet. But anyways, these little trays came from a woodworker called, his name is Kevin Yoder, who's my father, and he's a great woodworker. He has all sorts of wood products that he and my mom make together. It's pbwoodworking.com, or no, .net. And he made me a bunch of these little trays for my pencils, and I tell you, they're such a great little product. I use them all the time. So I highly recommend getting some to keep yourself organized. Oh, I missed one of your comments there, Diane. So you're working with different styles, one in black and white, one study in values like the skull one we did with Will, one realistic, and one for fun psychedelic colors. That sounds like a really fun project. I know you're not here right now, but that sounds like a lot of fun. I can't wait to see that work. I hope you post it when you're done. Working in values, doing a value study, that can really teach you a lot. Just working with black and white only. Matter of fact, the other video that I have on my YouTube channel is a black and white pair that I used French grays, I believe, which is just more of a neutral gray. A lot of different sets will have cold gray or warm gray, and the French grays are more like a neutral, or some of them are a little bit more green tone. It just kind of depends on the manufacturer. But I really like French grays. But just paying attention to values, working in your darks and your lights, and not even worrying about color, that will teach you more than most projects will. you know, values is really what sort of makes and breaks your drawing or painting. I think there's a quote, I don't know who said it, that color gets most of the credit for what value does. Value really carries the painting or the, you know, the artwork. Because you can have beautiful colors, but if your values aren't right, if your lights and darks aren't in the right spot, if your lighting is off, or it's not, if your contrast isn't strong enough, you know, the color really means nothing. You know, it doesn't translate well. But, you know, at the same time, if you have wonderful values and your colors are off, like say I'm doing a pink, you know, avocado instead of more realistic colors, it'll still look good because the values are in the right spots, the light's in the right spot, but the it's not going to look realistic. It's just going to look more, you know, abstract. And I'm just going to add some sepia into this section right here. There's a little bit of shadowing. I'm still using really light pressure. Okay, so I think that's all I'm going to do for my first, at least the colors for the first layer. I'm going to go back and actually add in more of the light yellow, because if you look close at my work, it looks a little bit thin. I don't know if you can kind of see how there's a little bit of, there's like holes, you can still see the paper. I'm going to sharpen this pencil real quick. You're still going to be able to see the grain of the paper, but the idea is to get most of it, you know, the more you layer, the less you're going to see, but I want a nice even application, and I want a heavy application for my first blend. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the blending. So you can blend without odorless mineral spirits for color pencil just by continuous layering of color pencil. Some people will use a white color pencil to sort of blend the colors together, or burnishing by using a lot of hand pressure. I find that using the mineral spirits is just a total night and day experience. I used to use the white pencil, you know, when I was learning to color with pencils, and I would use the blending pencils too. Prismacolor had a colorless blender, which I think these brands also have their own colorless blender, which is just a color pencil with no pigment. It's just the wax. And I don't prefer them. Some people really enjoy them. But I guess my drawing and my painting is sort of coming together. I guess you could say that, where it's like I like to draw like I paint and I like to paint like I draw. So the two mediums are sort of coming together. So I just find it just works for me. So, but you can see small little tiny circles. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out here. I'm trying to hurry up a little bit so you can actually see what I'm talking about when I say blending. I'm actually going to be using paint brushes. So the brushes that I'm going to be using to blend the odorless mineral spirits with, they are synthetic hog hair bristles. These ones I get from Hobby Lobby, they have a more of a stiff, firm bristle. I've got a couple different sizes here. You can use a regular paintbrush and just kind of experiment with what kind you like. Taklon bristle brushes, which are sort of the generic, your everyday paint brushes, those are a little bit more flexible. These ones are a little bit firmer of a bristle, and I feel like these ones can push the pigment around a little bit better. But if I'm kind of just wanting to smudge the color pencil slightly and not really blend it, I'll use a softer bristle depending on what I'm doing. But usually I'm using those brushes. So I'm just making sure I have enough layers on here to really set the stage. Still using light hand pressure. I'm really trying to be careful about not squashing the tooth of the paper, because I plan on doing lots of layers with this, because that's how we're going to get our texture and our realism, is by constant layering. And the nice thing about this paper is that you can go light over dark, where if you were using, regular drawing paper or watercolor paper, you can't really get that light over dark. It's just something about the amount of texture of this paper. It really just picks up the color pencil immediately, so you can do that. And it's not just this paper in particular. You can get sanded paper. I think Fisher makes sanded papers. Lux Archival is another sanded paper that I've tried, and those are very, very gritty, rough textured papers. But experiment. You'll find something that you really like to work with. And who knows, maybe I'll find something else later down the line and I'll stop using this one day. Okay, so I've got another layer of the yellow on there. I'm gonna go back to the green, and I can't remember which one I used. I think it was this one. I'm gonna sharpen my pencil one more time. And it looks like my camera has crashed again. Let me fix that. I apologize. Let's see, give me 1 second. I am going to get a webcam so I can stop using the silly phone. Okay. And I am connected again. Let's see. There we go. I'm back, and my camera is really out of proportion now. Sorry about that, guys. This black box is like so annoying. I always have to go in here. I'm using OBS, and I have to go in here and click on the filters and the cropping, and it's just a pain. There we go. Technical difficulties. Okay, you stay there and you come over here. Okay, back in action. One day I'm gonna be a pro at this. I'm gonna make so many mistakes that I'm just gonna end up knowing how to do it all. And you know what, that's so true with art too. You know, I have made so many mistakes with art, and you know, it's really I'm gonna, like, I have a fear of the blank page. I always have, you know, being scared to color something or start a new project because I have this picture in my mind and I want it to look like I'm thinking, and I'm scared of screwing up. But I'm slowly getting over that. And I just feel like it's always been sort of a struggle. Yes, my skills have improved over the years because I'm forcing myself to just keep practicing and doing the work. But, you know, looking back, I'm really grateful for a lot of the mistakes that I've made because I learned something from them. So I guess really they're not mistakes, they're discoveries. No mistakes, discoveries, happy accidents. But yes, I always learn something from them. Okay, so I've got enough green. So as I'm working, I'm looking at the reference constantly. So anytime my pencil moves, my eyes are following the reference right there. Especially if you're really wanting to do realism, you really need to know what you're looking at. What is it that you're trying to do? You know, until you've studied something long enough, it's really difficult to get this amount of detail from memory. You know, personally, I don't think it could be done, you know, doing a photorealistic picture without looking at a reference. You know, if someone says that, they're probably lying. But I don't know, maybe there's somebody with a photographic memory. I'm not one of those people. So I always look at a reference because I like to know what I'm going for. So I'm going to add a little bit of white too, because as I'm looking, this area has a lot lighter value than what I have put down. So I'm going to put some white on the areas that need to come up in value. This particular white pencil is one of my favorites. This is a Derwent color pencil, but it's not a part of the Lightfast. This one is a part of the Derwent drawing set, and this is the Chinese white. If you've watched other artists on YouTube, they've probably talked about this very pencil. It's a wax-based pencil. It's very, very buttery feeling, very creamy, and it's very opaque. So a lot of times, you know, with these other sets, the whites, they're just very transparent. They're kind of, they don't cover very much, but this one just really, it's a nice white pencil, and it covers pretty decently for a color pencil. And also, this brush here is a mop brush. It's actually an old makeup brush that I got from cosmetology school, and it is now one of my art brushes. So it's I try to just get little dust particles off of my drawings. You never want to use your hand to wipe something, especially color pencil, because you're going to end up getting it on your fingers and your hands, and it's going to smudge, or you're going to get oil from your hands onto your paper, and that oil can discolor, you know, your artwork over time. So I always try to not touch my artwork. And I'm doing the same technique, just small little circles, trying to be consistent. I'm really excited for the texture in the avocado seed center. All those little veins and just different colors of browns and oranges. That one's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited to focus on texture with this series and really kind of show you how I create texture. So I hope that you kind of hang with me for the whole series, because I expect it's going to take some time, because this is just a very slow medium. I mean, we've been talking for what, an hour, and I haven't even gotten the rest color blocked, but that's okay. You know where I'm going with it. Okay, so I think I've got enough layering built up on this avocado, or on this slice, that I can demonstrate what I'm going to be doing with the odorless mineral spirits. So I am using a product called Gamsol. It is a odorless mineral spirit, and it's, you don't have to get Gamsol. It's just the one that I just happened to pick up. I think they're all the same. I've used, generic brands. I wouldn't use turpentine or anything from the hardware store. I would go to a art store and get, either, the Michaels brand or Hobby Lobby brand or whatever brand, or Gamsol or something like that. One thing about the Gamsol that I've heard is that it is one of the least toxic. I mean, it's odorless mineral spirits. They're all toxic. I wouldn't exactly drink it, but I guess it's the less smelly of them all. I can't really tell a difference, to be honest. But if you're someone that is sensitive to smell, I would recommend this one in the hopes that that would, not give you any headaches. But I do try to keep it sealed in a little container, so when I'm not using it, it's not exposed and I'm not breathing it in. Even though it's odorless, it still has a fume. Okay, so I'm going to start with my large brush and then move to my small brush. So I'm going to use this large one here. So even in painting, you always want to use a brush that you can control. You want to use a decently sized brush, so a large brush for the size that it's going to fit in. So, and one that you can easily control. So I wouldn't do this whole area with a tiny little brush. That's just going to take way too long. Using the correct size brush is going to help you out immensely with your work. Okay, making sure my camera's still good. Everybody's still happy. Cool beans. Okay, so I am dipping it in. Now this brush is pretty saturated. I'm just going to take a brush and I'm going to dab it. You don't want it soaking. You don't want it dripping. And I'm actually going to use the smaller brush in this area because there's more going on. I'm interested in blending out the yellow first, and then I'm going to go into the green. So I usually try to start in my light sections and work my way into the darker sections, because I don't want to drag any pigment from a darker section into areas that are lighter in value. So here I'm going to go into the green, and I want a nice blend between the two. So what the odorless mineral spirits does is it breaks down the binder of the color pencil, and it sort of melts it. I don't really know how else to explain it, but it melts the pigment and it turns it into more like a paint-like consistency or a watercolor, and it just works. It's like magic. I love it. So I'm being very careful about these edges here. That's where we put the yellow ochre and that other green. So right now I have a lot of this lime green on my brush. I think I'm just going to paint sort of up to that point, clean my brush and use the smaller one. I don't necessarily want to remove that because it is a solvent, yes, and you are going to dissolve what you put down on paper. So this is another reason why I don't spend a lot of time on details so early on in the drawing, because The beginning stages is where you're going to use most of your mineral spirits, and it's going to just remove all that nice detail that you worked so hard to get. So essentially, the more layers that you put on and the more you progress in your drawing, the less odorless mineral spirits you want to use, because it will remove as well as blend. So you have to kind of learn how to get the right consistency, the right amount of mineral spirits on your brush to manipulate what you have on the paper. And that all just comes with practice. And this stuff will run. So if you have, if you have a lot of liquid on your brush and you're starting at the edge of your object, it's going to run and it's going to bleed. So I usually try to, keep my brush further away, from that section, or just make sure that I don't have much on my brush. So I'm going to clean my brush off again because I'm going to go back into the light yellow. And I don't want to pull any of that green in there. And I'm being kind of rough with it. So, I'm sort of really scrubbing at it. These bristles aren't hard enough to where I'm going to damage the paper. So I don't have to worry about the tooth of the paper when I'm doing the blending. I'm staying away from the line that I outlined the seed with because I don't want any of that brown getting into the yellow just yet. And when you're all done with your blending, you want to make sure that it's completely dry before you start coloring on it again. Because if you have a damp paper and you're taking a hard implement and coloring on it, you're going to damage that tooth of the paper. But it dries really, really fast, like literally 5 minutes, maybe even less, depending on how much liquid you add to your paper. But you can just see how much of a nice blend you get with that. And it's sort of starting to create the texture already. So I'm going to zoom in. And you can see where it sort of starts to look a little cloudy. And I'm going to try and get a little bit brighter. There we go. Sorry if it's a little dark. But yeah, you can see where it's starting to look a little cloudy, and those areas where it's like darker versus lighter versus more lime green versus dark green, like that's all you can start enhancing that. And that's how I start building up the texture. So, keep following along with me, and I'll show you more in detail, what I do with those. So I'm going to zoom back out. Clean my brush out. I'm going to switch to the smaller brush now. And I'm just going to go right in here. And you can tell if you have too much mineral spirits. I'm going to zoom in again here. So right here, you can see where it's really sort of pulling and it looks really wet. I have too much on there because it's now removing, it's not really blending. It's like really sort of taking away the pencil. So I'm gonna just dab my brush off on my towel and really kind of scrub it in there and try and get as much of that mineral spirits off as I can. And I'm just gonna push what's on the paper very carefully into the other areas. I might even go with a smaller brush. This one's just dry, and I'm gonna use what's on the paper to kind of get in that small section. This one is a synthetic hog hair script liner. It's a number 1 size. I'm going to add just a touch more because it is starting to evaporate, and I can tell if it's not moving, but you can tell that there's still a lot of color pencil down, you don't have enough. But if you've saturated it and it's not blending like you want it to, it's looking thin and you know you've saturated it, you just didn't have enough color pencil down. So just let it dry and you just keep layering. So I'm going to go around here carefully. It's kind of like performing surgery in a way. And I'm just going to soften this. I'm going to go back to that smaller brush. I'm going to go into this area. So not only are you going to be working on your color pencil coloring skills, but you're also going to be working on your painting skills. There we go. As I'm looking at the reference, I'm seeing more and more colors. Like, you know, in this area on the reference, I'm seeing more like tealy kind of greens. And I think adding some of those, starting to add in different kinds of greens is just going to make it really much more exciting. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, so I have this pretty much all blended, or everything sort of has a touch of the solvent. It's been softened. I'm going to go around that edge. And sort of blend in where I put that yellow ochre and the yellow green color. Being very careful not to put too much or go out of the line. I do want to have crisp edges, and I can already tell that I've gone a little too far because it's starting to bleed. But if there's enough tooth in the paper, we can pretty much fix that. So it's not the end of the world. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna let this dry, and I think we can get this guy up here color blocked. I'm gonna wait to do this part maybe next session, but let me go ahead and get this whole top half of the avocado. Now there's a lot of texture in this top half. You can see the reflection of the light. You can really see where, I guess, the camera light or studio light is. And there's all sorts of different lumps and bumps, and it's very the light is very broken because of the texture, the surface of the avocado. And we have some reflected highlights along the side here. We can see that. You know, the strongest bit is here, but then we do have some reflected highlights coming around here. We've got some shadow here and here. So what I want to do is sort of make myself a little roadmap. So this is where having the printout comes in handy, because you can either draw on here and circle areas where you can imagine shapes. So I know that in this circle, this is where my strongest highlight's going to be. And if I create a shape sort of like this, that is where my reflected highlight lives. And then here are other areas of highlights. And then everything else is midtone and shadow, pretty much. So you can break that up into each sections or shapes and kind of decide what value of green to put where. The local color of this is definitely green. You know, it's a green avocado, but we have different greens in this. Each section is a different green. So what I could do is just pick out a couple different greens and loosely sketch in those sections. So I'm going to take a really pale green for my brightest highlight. You know, instinctively you may want to put white, but that's not white. It's going to be more of a really light green. And I'm going to see what I have in my stash. This is where having lots of pencils comes in handy, because some sets have a better selection of particular colors than others do. I think the Derwent Light Fast set has some really nice a really nice selection of greens and blues. But I'm sort of on the hunt for more of a pastel green, and I'm not seeing any pastel shades in the Derwent Light Fast set. So I'm going to go back to my Luminance set, and it looks like the lightest green is this one, which is called, I don't know, middle something's in a different language, number 713. It's more like a minty green, but it's pretty close. If I zoom in on my tablet here to this green, it's pretty close. Doesn't look like that on camera, but on my end in real life, it's pretty close. If I put a little bit of white into that, I think I can get that color even closer. But I think that is going to be the best option for what I have available to me. So that's what I'm going to use. As long as it's relatively in the right value, I think it'll be okay. So don't overthink it. Just do the best. And you don't need to have every single pencil like I do. Like if you have a limited set of pencils, you can still make a really wonderful piece of artwork. You know, the colors may not be on point, you know, unless you're really, really good about mixing colors, like painting, like color mixing. But I find it's kind of challenging to mix colors with color pencil because they don't really blend together like paint does. You know, you can get a much better mixture with paint than you can with a color pencil, or at least in for me. I think it's just easier if I just have more colors to choose from. So, but anyways, So whatever kind of color pencil you're working with, just make sure your darks are dark enough and your lights are light enough for the value scale that your pencils will let you have. So I'm going to go ahead and just loosely color in where I think that spot is. And I'm just kind of very loosely making a blob in that general shape. So you could actually go back to the line drawing where if you, matter of fact, I apologize, if you want to follow along with this particular artwork, I have the reference photo and the line drawing available for download on my website. It's completely free. You just go to jhillfineart.com/tutorials, and it should be right there on that page. It'll have a couple links. There's going to be 2 line drawing downloads, one with this particular composition with the plate and one that just has the avocados. But on the line drawing, when you go to print that out, you can add a couple lines if you need some more direction to keep yourself organized, to be able to kind of know where these areas of value are going to be. So if you're not really great at hand drawing, or you can just do it that way. You can just kind of briefly sketch on something that's not your finished picture and do that. Okay. Now for the outside highlight is there's a lot going on, because it's like a very staccato, broken lines of light and dark, going all the way around. I think it's easier to start light and work your way darker. So if you squint at, where that reflected highlight is around the outside edges here, and just choose like a lighter medium green, we can add dark in later, and that will be a little bit easier to capture that. So I am going to put this particular green down here where this reflected light is. It's a little bit brighter than up top, so I'm just going to loosely sketch in that so I know where to put that. And I'm going to find a middle value green. It's not very green, or not a saturated green, so I'm going to find something a little bit more muted. I think this one looks okay. This one is a Caran d'Ache Luminance chromium oxide green, which is interesting because didn't we use that earlier in the polychromos? We did. Look how different they are. Same name, 2 completely different shades of green. So, good tip, when you do get pencils, don't usually go off the name. Like if you're using cadmium red in this brand, cadmium red in that brand is going to look completely different. So I always try to swatch out my colors or create color charts. That way I can just kind of quickly, see the colors that I have. 9 times out of 10, like even the casing colors that they're labeled with are wrong. So you always just kind of have to look at, just like a scratch piece of paper and draw it out to see what the color really looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to quickly put that in. This might actually be a little too dark. I'm gonna keep with it, and I'll just see what happens. there's enough tooth in this paper that if I need to raise the value of this particular green, I could add a little bit of white or a lighter green color. So I'm sort of using a very loose, large, circular kind of texture or motion, you know, when I'm sketching this in, instead of the tiny little circles. But I'm okay with that, because even though we see buildup of color that's more built up and thinner in others, where I'm getting sort of these spots like I had talked about earlier, it's just going to help with the bumpy texture that we're going to be creating on this. And I'm going to put some mid-tone. We'll call this the mid-tone, our middle value green. And I'm going to put some here. It's a little bit more green in this section, so I'm actually going to go on top of it with something a little bit more saturated green, a little bit more yellow leaning. That way I can remember when I come back to this, that needs to be a little bit more green. And then I'm just going to loosely, I'm going to take my dark green, I'm going to use the pine green. It has a little bit more bluer undertones. It's still pretty green, but it's more blue leaning, because it looks like this particular green in this section is a little bit darker and cooler in hue, in color. Down here you can see in the reference photo there is some reflected light bouncing off from the yellow of the avocado, and you can actually see more yellow tones. So I'm going to color this in with a little bit of a yellow green, just in that little section, because I know it sort of stops right there because the shadow starts to pick up over here. It's quite dark over in this section with the shadow. All right, I think I have a pretty good idea of where I need to put my colors and what value those colors need to be. So I think that is it for today. I am going to work on this particular avocado slice off camera. I want to have it up to this particular level of completeness when I see you next Tuesday, same time, 7 o'clock. And I want this to be color blocked with the correct values, and then we'll continue on from there. So I'm not going to work on any texture. I'm just going to be working more on this color blocking, which is, I'm using the same techniques that I showed you, and I'm not going to worry about the plate just yet. That'll come later. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you come back to join me next week. So again, that is next Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you want to follow along, the reference photo and line drawing are on my website at jhillfineart.com/tutorials. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at jhillfineart@gmail.com. I also do one-on-one coaching, and if you're local to Southeast Georgia, I do in-person art lessons as well as local workshops. But if you are far away, we can work something out virtually and do some one-on-one coaching over the internet. So anyways, thanks so much. I'll see you next time. Oh, quick question. How do you determine the shape of the reflections? So, okay, good question. So if you have your reference photo and you kind of squint, especially helps if you take your glasses off and you have really bad vision, everything sort of starts to blur. So you can much easily look at the shapes, kind of like when you are outside looking at cloud shapes and you can imagine this cloud looking like a particular animal or something like that. I'm looking at one color at a particular level of lightness. So the highlight of that top avocado, the strongest highlight sort of looks like a circle. It's just very splotchy. So that's one shape, one two-dimensional shape. And you just sort of have to imagine other areas, like what's the darkest darks of the avocado on top. You know, it kind of looks like a bit of a U shape, sort of coming up and down in this section. So that would be one shape. So pretty much anywhere that you can break up your reference photo and imagine it being one color and one value, and you just sort of translate it like that. It does take practice, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. So hopefully that the penguin kicking the soccer ball shape in the middle. Okay, you're using your imagination. That's good. I don't see it, but you get the idea. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, I'll see y'all back next week, same time. Bye.